It's Phil Steele Friday. We've got some picks to make as well and get some thoughts on the Mountaineers matchup against the Bobcats from the one and only Phil Steele. We'll have that today on In the Gun.
You are now watching Believe.
ITG.
With special guest, Phil Steele.
Author of the College Football Bible.
He can see things before they happen. It's a Jedi trait.
All you gotta do is bet on the winner and you'll never lose.
Mountaineer Nation.
You are In the Gun.
Hey, a real pleasure being on. Thanks for having me on the In the Gun podcast.
Welcome in to Phil Steele Friday here on ITG. I'm Schuyler Callihan. That is the signal caller, Jed Drenning. And here in just a few moments, we're going to talk to the man, the myth, the legend, Phil Steele, getting his thoughts, of course, on the West Virginia matchup against the Ohio Bobcats and some Big 12 talk as well. We're going to talk a couple of games before we get to Phil, because if not, we'd be here for 4 hours with as many games as there is in the Big 12 this week. And a few of them just probably not worth throwing Phil's way, so we'll take care of that before. And then at the end of the show, after Phil departs, we'll make our Big 12 picks as well. Or it's not our Big 12 picks, our West Virginia, Ohio picks that we do every single week. So before we get started, a thank you to all of our presenting sponsors, to Bet Online, where the game starts, to Fortis, for roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed. Be sure to visit fortis.us.com. To the fine folks at Toothman, for all your vehicular needs, be sure to stop out and see JR and the fine folks there. And as we all know, cars cost less in Grafton. And to Johnston Equipment, check out and see what they've got going on Route 33 between Weston and Buchanan. And to our newest friends of the show, the Book Exchange. Be sure to get all your Mountaineer gear and WView apparel at the Book Exchange. And if, Jed, if you're not going to the Book Exchange on game day, what are you doing? You've got to go in there to at least spend 35 to 45 minutes
Tell you what
in
you
there.
Might be doing.
If you're me, it's 2 hours in there, but
what you might be doing is going to bookexchangewv.com and saving 20% with the code in the gun 20 at checkout. That is a chunky saving. So if you're shopping online, bookexchangewv.com, save 20% on your purchase. That can add up fast with the code in the gun 20 at checkout. That's a heck of a deal.
Yeah, especially as much as I would like to buy there. You're going to be able to save a lot. So, all right, let's go ahead and get into some of these games that we're not going to discuss with Phil. There's going to be 3 of them here. One of them is a top 25 so-called game, but it's Cal Poly at number 25, Utah. How about the Utes last week, Jed? Just coming out of the gate, stomping UCLA, their former Pac-12 rival. We kind of knew that Utah, well, I wouldn't say we knew, but there was a good chance that Utah was going to be significantly improved on the offensive side of the ball this year with Jason Beck, Devin Dampierre, and what a start for them. Putting up a ton of points, moving the ball. He was almost perfect on the day. Utah looks legit.
They do look legit. You talked about the new look offense. They plucked the OC from New Mexico. They plucked the quarterback, New Mexico. And the next thing you know, they come out and they look polished. They look refined. The defense was the defense last year. It's the issue was the revolving door at quarterback. There was no continuity, and they struggled mightily in large measure because of the quarterback situation. Now, I walked out of the UCLA game thinking, Phil told us last week, UCLA is a team with a pulse. Okay, so that was a real win. That was a legit win on the road against a Big Ten member. That's a legit win out of the gate for Utah. But to drop 43 on them with this new look offense, that was even more impressive. I think what I need to see out of Utah is you can't have a situation where the new quarterback is both polishing the pass game and the leading rusher. Yes, he's going to make plays in the pass game, but somebody's going to have to elevate to carry some of that burden in the run game, whether it's Wayshawn Parker and the Quarry Rogers, one of these other Utes are going to have to step up to help him carry the load when running the football. But yeah, impressive. We're trying to knock a few of these games out because otherwise, like you said, Phil will be on here half the day. This is the time of year where you don't have interleague play within the conference, not a lot. So all 16 teams often in action against 16 other teams. So we're zipping through a couple of these and moving on.
Yeah, UCF. Well, I'll say this: they are playing Cal Poly. I don't even know if I mentioned the opponent there. Do we have a spread on that? I'm sure it's probably a billion if it is.
These are the three games I couldn't find a spread on. I'm sure it's out there.
It's
I just didn't
well, there
put a lot of
is
effort looking.
a secret that I was told a couple of years back was that some of these FBS, FCS games they don't come out with the line until maybe 48 hours or 24 hours before the kickoff. Why that is, I don't know. I guess they just want to try and get it as close as they can get it, but we'll see. So moving on to our next one, North Carolina A&T used to be kind of in my backyard up there in Greensboro where I lived in Burlington, but they're going on to take UCF and well, not a great performance down there for Scott Frost in his return. They didn't put up a bunch of points against Jack State. They really struggled. They found a way to get the win, but it's there's going to be some interesting storylines, I think, moving forward. And they started the quarterback, the transfer from Marshall. I was not expecting that. I thought it was going to be the Jackson kid, and they went with Francher. So we'll see if that's something that they keep going with or if they end up going back to Jackson.
Yeah, Jackson ended up throwing for close to 300 yards. That was one of the few highlights they had
Hmm.
offensively. But I was, to be honest with you, really pulling for Jack State and the fighting Clinton Trickets
Yeah, it's hard
to get
not
out
to,
there and pull
right?
an upset, but they didn't do it. But yeah, UCF needs to get some things polished uh, in week two against North Carolina A&T, especially on the offensive side of the football. On the defensive side of the football, they made some things happen, but finally we've got Weber State heading out to Zona. Zona, there were some Arizona fans worried about that Hawaii game. Why wouldn't they after Hawaii knocks off Stanford? But they took care of business. They looked pretty solid. Noah Fafita's back. They lost some talent elsewhere, of course, starting with McMillan, a generational receiver. But so Zona's in survive and advance mode. So Weber State comes to town, a chance for them to work out some of the kinks and try and continue to improve before they get into league play. But yeah, I'm just on ESPN.com. That's the only place I really check for these, Schuyler. And I'm sure it's out there somewhere for people more interested who want to find lines on these three games. But real quick, before we get Phil Steele on here, you mentioned we'll do prop bets at the end of the show after Phil for this week's game against the Bobcats. As far as last week's prop bets against Robert Morris, West Virginia over under 50 and a half points. You nailed that one. You took the under. I took the over. So you got that one correct. West Virginia over under 3.5 turnovers. We talked
Hmm.
about we've only had 4+ once since 2019. Can Zach Alley right out of the gates change that? You said over. You missed that one. I said under. I got that one. So we were both 1 for 2 going into question number three. Question number three, over under 3.5 quarterbacks. It was looking grim. 61 snaps into the game with Nico. Okay. As far as hitting the over, we both took the over and we both hit the over. So we both ended up, because we played, of course, 4 quarterbacks. Max Brown, uh, our Max didn't even dress because of the hamstring issue that he was suffering. So to be determined this week. But so we ended up with 4 quarterbacks. So far in week one, we were both 2 for 3 in our
I'll take
prop
it.
bets, and we have a couple fun ones coming up at the end of the show for
Yeah,
the
I'll
Ohio
take that.
Bobcats.
I'll take that hot start. And if you would have told me Max Brown wasn't going to play in that game, I would have probably it may have changed my answer, I think. So I'm glad that I didn't have that in the back of my head
Here,
going into it. And also, let's go Weber State, right, Jed? We need Weber State to do their thing against Arizona because that way West doesn't have an opportunity to pick up some points this week in the Big 12 pick'ems. So
so the scoring offense for Arizona, correct? Now, remember, I'm glad you said that. We brought back the opportunity for the fans to pick against us. We made in the preview episode our Big 12 picks of the week. I pick who I think is going to throw for the most yards, a team in the Big 12, Owen rushing yards. Wes picks scoring offense or scoring defense, and Schuyler picks scoring offense. You can check the link, which is on the pinned tweet on X at In the Gun Podcast to take part. Please submit your picks. That's one of the fun things we do throughout the course of the season. The fans get really really engaged in that. And we have some people kick our butts sometimes. So
Oh,
let's see if we
yeah.
can do the same thing this year.
Yeah, if we get our butts kicked again this year, it ain't gonna be anything new. So join in on the fun, on being smarter than us. So we're gonna go and take a quick break, and on the other side, we're gonna get Phil in here to talk the Mountaineers and Bobcats and a couple of other Big 12 matchups that are worth the watch this weekend. So hang tight. We'll be back here with Phil Steele on Phil Steele Friday.
For nearly 20 years, Fortis has been the nation's leader in providing guaranteed roof performance programs for commercial buildings. Fortis offers roof performance solutions that feature extensive initial and ongoing reconditioning for commercial buildings as an alternative to traditional replacement, with long-term performance guarantees that are backed by global leader Lloyd's of London. Fortis offers a comprehensive range of roof performance management programs that provide financial security, extend the life of our customers' roofs, and make a significant impact on ROI. Fortis is currently improving performance and increasing ROI for customers at more than 4,800 locations, with more than 140 million square feet protected, including many Fortune 500 companies that have turned to Fortis to save money, gain financial certainty, and extend the life of their existing roofs. Fortis has helped customers save more than $520 million in capital roof replacement costs for an average ROI of over 250%. To learn more, visit fortis.us.com. Fortis, roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed.
Nobody supports the blue and gold Mountaineers like Toothman Ford. With over 20 NIL deals and counting, Toothman Ford continues to rally behind our student athletes. And it's time we rally and support the dealer that supports the Mountaineers. Not only does Toothman Ford offer the best prices in the state on pre-owned, their never over MSRP campaign on new Fords guaranteed to save you thousands. Drive with pride all season long, knowing you're supporting the dealer that fuels our Mountaineers. Toothman Ford, where cars cost less, in Grafton and at toothmanford.com.
Back in the gun here with Phil Steele on this Phil Steele Friday, and it's a great time to always get to talk to Phil and get his thoughts on some of the biggest matchups in college football, and of course at the end, his thoughts on the Mountaineers and what they will be facing this weekend against the Ohio Bobcats. Phil, welcome back in to another episode here with us on ITG, and of course, if you have anything to promote, feel free to do so.
Yeah, I appreciate that. The magazine's still out there. Pick up your copy. It's at Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, and you can also get it at philsteele.com, 360 pages, and you get 2 full pages on all 136 teams. We also have an FCS magazine up, which gives you 2 full pages on every FCS team, and an NFL magazine. NFL kicks off this week, 4 full pages on every NFL team. Those are digital only, and those are available at philsteele.com.
Bill, we're going to start off in the top 25, and we were just discussing the fact it's a pretty lean week on that front. When you look at ranked teams facing off, there's really only one matchup to speak of this week, and I wanted to ask you about Michigan at 1-0, heading to the Prairie to face Oklahoma at 1-0. And I bet both these teams are tired of the outside the lines, off the field storylines, and they just want to play some football. But what do you see playing out here with Oklahoma as a slight favorite against the Wolverines?
Yeah, well, I've got Oklahoma, my number one surprise team in the country this year. I think they're a vastly improved team. You look at them defensively last year, they held opponents to 87 yards per game below their season average, which was number 6 in the country. You got Brett Venables on the defensive side and 8 starters back. They've got an outstanding defensive line. And so I think they've got one of the top Ds. Their problem last year was offensively. They had a young offensive line, 0 returning starters. They had a banged-up receiving core. They had lost their top 5 receivers at one point due to injury, and so their offense really struggled. Well, this year they have a veteran offensive line, and the receiving core gets those injured players back and gets the addition of some key transfers coming in as well. The receiving core goes from below average to a strength. The offensive line goes from average to above average. They've got one of the best offensive line coaches out there in Bill Bedenbaugh. They added in Jaden Ott. Now, Jaden Ott didn't carry the ball much last week. I think he only had 1 carry, but they've got a deep running back core. And then John Mateer, in his first game with Oklahoma, nearly threw for 400 yards in his debut. He, of course, brought over offensive coordinator Ben Arbuckle with them. They're at home. The crowd's going to be loud. Michigan's got a dynamic quarterback in Underwood. I think he's going to have himself a really good year. But as we know, first-year starting quarterbacks generally struggle in their first road start. Ask Arch Manning about that.
Yeah.
And so when I think that the advantage to Oklahoma is it's a first road start for a freshman quarterback. Should be a lower scoring game. I think we got two great defenses, but I like Oklahoma to win this one by a touchdown or more.
Hopping over into the Big 12 here, Phil, kicking things off with the Cy-Hawk Bowl. I love talking this game. I like watching it every year. It's just an entertaining game between the two sides. A lot of hate. Iowa State and Iowa. This one's in Ames, but the Cyclones, they've won two of the last three. It's not been a rivalry that has traditionally gone their way, but the last two wins that they've had came in Iowa City. It's been 14 years since they won a game at home. Can they finally snap that streak this year and pick up another win over the Hawkeyes?
You know, I was impressed with Iowa State last week. I thought it was a flat spot. They were taking on a pretty good South Dakota team coming off the trip to Ireland. No flat spot at all. They just flat out dominated the game. They had 529, 209-yard edge. Now, when I talked to Coach Brent Key at Georgia Tech last year, or this year, I should say, and I talked to him about the trip to Ireland, he said that the game that really affected him was the second week back. So that concerns me for Iowa State. I did mention that to Coach Campbell when I talked to him. And so I think the situation does favor Iowa. You've got the second week back thing for Iowa State. Iowa, I like the way that Xavier Williams, their freshman running back, ran the ball last week, averaged 11.1 yards per carry. It looked like Gronowski was not 100%. Maybe he'll be 100% this week. They didn't have to throw the ball. They ran for 310. They've got an outstanding offensive line. And as you mentioned, Schuyler, they've won their last 6 trips to Ames, so they're trying for 7 in a row. I think the spread is priced accurately at Iowa State -3. I see it actually rose to 3.5 today. I'm expecting a close game, a tight one. So I'm going to take the dog. I'm going to take Iowa in this one. And I also like the under. When these two meet, you tend to play a little tighter, and it's actually gone under the total 17 of the last 20 years. So 17-3 to the under. So I like the under, and I'm going to lean with Iowa.
Sounds like Army-Navy.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking when he said that. So Baylor struggled last week in the opener against Auburn, especially on the defensive side. You know, Dave Aranda is trying to get that fixed as they head to SMU against a very dangerous Mustangs team. They got to knock off some rust against a directional school last week. Can Dave Aranda fix what ails them defensively, or are they going to have Jake Spavital trying to outscore people again this year?
Yeah, Coach Aranda said that he went for it on fourth down so many times last week because he was trying to protect his defense. That's scary. He gave up 307 yards on the ground, had a tough time stopping a mobile quarterback, and now they face Kevin Jennings, who is a mobile quarterback for SMU. So a tough matchup there. But I think Dave Aranda can get it fixed. They've got a potent offense. I mean, Sawyer Robertson threw for 419 yards against a really good Auburn defense. I was wondering who was going to replace Pendergrass as the other running back. Remember last year they had the duo, Washington and Pendergrass, both hitting you. And then the freshman, Cade Knighton, I think on his first run had like 16 yards on the carry. And then after that, only 5 carries for 13 yards. So they still haven't found that second running back to help out Washington. I think it's going to be a good game. I had SMU by 3. That's about where the spread is. I really don't have a lean in this one. I want to find out more about Baylor's defense. And, you know, SMU wasn't that impressive last week. Only 400 yards against East Texas A&M. In fact, their defense gave up 351. Granted, you figure a C performance against an FCS team. But I'm just going to watch this one and learn about the two teams.
All right, Phil. Last week we picked on Arkansas Pine Bluff, and it worked in my favor for my Big 12 pick'em. So I'm hoping this week you're going to be picking on Kent State because I got Texas Tech again scoring the most points in the Big 12. Is that going to happen this week? Do you think Texas Tech puts another huge number up?
Yeah, they should. And if you go back to last year, Kent State struggled as a double-digit dog. In fact, they got blown out quite often. Tennessee beat them 71-0. Penn State beat them 56-0. And Texas Tech this year, you know, as you mentioned, 67-7 over Arkansas Pine Bluff. Could have been worse. I thought they put away their offense late. And I think when you look at Tech, they are going to put up points. And Kent State last week, you know, I watched the game against Merrimack. I wanted to learn about this team a little bit. They've got a new head coach this year in Matt Carney. And Matt Carney thinks he's going to get this thing correct. They've got the worst team in football, and I think if he gets 2 or 3 wins out of this team, they ought to hire him full time. He's the interim head coach this year. But they're overmatched. And I think this is one where you've got some winnable games on deck, although they've got at Florida State, at Oklahoma coming up.
Gosh.
Oh, my goodness, another brutal schedule for Kent. But, when you play teams in your level, I think the key for Kent's going to be staying healthy. So I'm going to take Texas Tech to roll it up again. And, they should put up 60, 70 points once again, Schuyler.
Sounds good to me.
Let's hope not, Schuyler. I picked against him. Mike Gundy's Oklahoma State Cowboys. When you're coming off a 3-9 season, you're 1-0 against UT Martin, but it didn't look all that impressive in getting there. You have injury issues behind center at your quarterback spot. The last thing you need is a trip to Eugene on the road against the Ducks. Here they are as heavy dogs. I see Oregon favored by almost 30 points, Phil. Is this going to play out like everybody expects, or do you see something else happening here?
Yeah, I really was impressed with Dante Moore. I had questions about Moore. I watched him when he was UCLA freshman 2 years ago, and sort of average. But there's no doubting the guy's talent, his arm talent, mobility as well. And last week, Dante Moore looked really good. Now, granted, it was against Montana State, but keep in mind, Montana State was an undefeated team last year in the FCS. That's a good Montana State team, and they just sliced and diced them 59-13. Oklahoma State opened up with Haas Hedgney at the QB spot. Got 2 early touchdowns in the first quarter. Looked like they were on their way to a route, but he broke his foot, and then it was Zane Flores the rest of the game, and the offense looked average the rest of the game. It's a tough spot for Oklahoma State. And then, of course, you had a little banter between Gundy and Lanning this week, where Gundy was saying, hey, they spend so much money on their program. We don't. We shouldn't even be playing this game. And then Lanning came back and said, well, you spend more money than UT Martin does. You played them last week. So it was I think there's that little extra gives it to Oregon. I think the Ducks roll it up. And I'm very impressed with what I saw to Dante Moore last week. I like Oregon, and I'll lay the points here.
Gotta love Mike Gundy. He's always golden in press conferences. But going to the border war here, Kansas and Missouri. I believe we have Missouri at favored by 6 and a hook here. This is the first game between these two in 14 years. And look, this is another one that's probably an underrated rivalry that doesn't get talked about enough, probably largely because it hasn't been played in so long. I don't know really what to expect. I think maybe Kansas is getting a little short-sighted here, maybe, Phil. I don't know. Do you think Kansas has a shot to pull off the upset?
I think that, yes. Now, Missouri's got a really good defense. I'll say that when I talk to the coaches. Both offense and defense felt that the defense is going to be dominant this year, so they have a good defense. And this is a rivalry game, as you mentioned, Schuyler. And if you go back and look at the history of this one, the underdog is not only 10-5 in the rivalry, but 8 outright upsets. So over half the time, the underdog wins. And, the thing I've been impressed with so far is that Kansas defense. Now, granted, Fresno State looked a lot better last week than they did when they played Kansas. They put up a lot of points, a lot of yards, and Kansas held them to 216 yards. Last week, they held Wagner to 143, so they've got a good D. I like the fact that Jalen Daniels has a 7-to-1 ratio already, 7 touchdown passes, just 1 interception, and they've got the veteran quarterback edge. So I think with this one up there at 6.5, 7, I saw 7 yesterday, and it's always better to get a 7 than a 6.5 if you can. But I think Kansas does have a shot at the upset. I think they're playing pretty good ball. And let's keep in mind, at the end of last year, and in fact, the last 6 times Kansas has played a ranked team, and granted, Missouri's almost ranked, but I think for Kansas, they'll feel like they're playing a ranked team here. It's an SEC team. But last year, remember, they went into Kansas State, lost by 2. They upset Iowa State. They upset BYU. They upset Colorado. And the previous year, the final 2 games against ranked teams, they covered both of those. So they've won their last 6 against ranked teams. They get fired up for games like this. I'm going to take Kansas plus the points.
Interesting. Phil, last week, Cincinnati at Arrowhead against Nebraska. Still trying to figure out what to make of Nebraska, but it was a tough loss for the Bearcats. It was a tough loss for me. I picked Cincinnati to throw for the most yards in the Big 12 last week, Phil. And Brendan Sorsby acted like it was 1903. Now they did run for a couple hundred yards against the Huskers. They're facing a Bowling Green team at home in Cincinnati. They kind of struggled a little bit against Lafayette last week. They couldn't get uncorked offensively. It would seem like exactly the type of game that Cincinnati needs at this point so they can rebound and polish some things up. And maybe we'll see the real Brennan Sorsby step forward. Do you think that's what's going to happen?
I do. And when you look at Nebraska this year, I think at the end of the year, Nebraska may just be a 10-win team. So that was a really good loss last week, only losing by 3 against Nebraska. And I know it was technically a Cincinnati home game, but as you know, Jed, that it was 95% of the crowd was Nebraska. It felt like a Nebraska home game through and through. So to go on the road against Nebraska, and that's what I'm going to call it, and only lose by 3, that's impressive. I do think Sorsby has a much better game this week. You know, Eddie George has brought in a lot of transfers, brought in some players back with him from his FCS school, but I'm going to go with Cincinnati in this one. I think they look a lot better, and I'm bullish on Cincy. I think they could be a sneaky pick in the Big 12 this year. I remember last year they started out 5-1. I think this is by far Satterfield's best team.
Bill, we got Delaware and Colorado. Obviously, the Buffs had a disappointing week 1 loss against Georgia Tech. They got gashed on the ground, over 300 yards. They gave up over 100 some to Haynes King, the quarterback. Delaware's got a quarterback that can run it a little bit too, it looks like. So do we see any possible, I don't want to say an upset here, but is there a chance maybe the Hens cover?
I'm going to lean with Colorado in this one. I thought Sanders was pretty upset that they lost the game, felt they gave a decent performance. And I'll tell you what, after the first half, I'm like, you know what, this Colorado team's not very good. I mean, they got 3 turnovers out of the box, and yet they were still trailing at the half in that game. And I'm like, they're going to get blown out. But they played a lot better in the second half. And, Caden Salter used his legs. He looked more like the Caden Salter from 2 years ago at Liberty, and then the Caden Salter last year at Liberty, at least in the second half. And so I think Colorado at home with the altitude edge, just a rare trip for Delaware, rare trip to altitude. I'm going to take Colorado to come out of here looking pretty good this week.
I've been complaining, Phil, about the AD's job of putting this Kansas State schedule together. You couldn't do a lot. Yormark obviously influenced that game in Ireland, but then you got to bounce back after the loss to Iowa State, all that travel involved. You play a Dakota school in week 2, so that's not much to rebound against. Any school with Dakota in the name, as they say, you better watch out. And we found that it was true last week. And now in week 3, yes, Army lost to Tarleton State. Yes, they struggled in so many ways, but they also ran for 280 against Tarleton State. Is that really what Kansas State needs on the schedule in week 3? But you got to figure Chris Kleiman is going to rally the troops, right? What do you see unfolding in the Little Apple?
Yeah, and I mentioned Coach Kleiman, Coach Key's comments about the second week after back, and I go, wow, and you've played an option team in Army. That is a brutal situation. And he's like, we'll handle it, Phil. We've been working on it, and so they've been preparing for it, but that it really is tough. And if you watched Army last week, at one point they were in control against Tarleton State. A couple plays went against them. They, of course, missed the game-winning field goal and then missed a field goal in overtime. Dwayne Coleman did get banged up a couple of times, but Cale Helms took his place. Helms is a bigger quarterback. Coleman's probably the more explosive quarterback running-wise, and that's what you talk about when you're looking at Army quarterbacks. I think Army's going to be tough. Off a loss, it's a good situation for them. They're getting like 17.5 points here. I think they keep it closer than expected. I do think K-State wins this game. I think K-State's going to have a good season this year. They've been without their top running back the last 2 games, but Avery Johnson hitting 67%, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. I think K-State wins, but I'm going to take Army plus the points.
A city rivalry here between Houston and Rice. Both teams probably didn't have maybe the sexiest of wins out of the gate. Stephen F. Austin for Houston, they beat 27-0. Rice, they go, 12? I think they put up 14-12 against Louisiana. Houston, kind of a heavy favorite here, near 2 touchdowns. Do you lay it here with the Cougars?
Rice impressed me last week because Louisiana's a really good team. I think Louisiana could be the best team in the Sun Belt, and they went in there and granted, at the end of the game, Louisiana missed a couple field goals, could have won, but the option did win. And when I talked to Coach Abel, over the summer, or after spring, I should say, in the spring. He was confident his team was going to have a winning year, and coming out of the box with a win over Louisiana, that's a big win. Now, but I'm really bullish on Houston this year because, they had the defense last year. There's no doubt about that. Last year, they held opponents to 75 yards per game below their average, number 13 in the country. Their problem last year was offense. And now this year, they got Connor Wegman at QB. Only 27 points against FS Austin, but I like the Dean Connors addition. I thought he was the best offensive player Rice had last year, and having him on the offense is going to be a big plus. It's a game where Houston's on the road, but are they really on the road? You're playing in the same doggone city, for crying out loud. Not much of a trip whatsoever. And the thing that surprises me in this is generally when you have a series like this, I like to take I'm going to put this in quote marks, road team, because it's not much of a road trip, but the home team's actually had a really good record. I was surprised at the spread. I thought it'd be more like 10 in this one. I like Houston to win the game, but this is another one where I think I'm going to learn about both these teams because Rice impressed me last week. They played a really good Louisiana team and came out on top on the road, so they scare me a little bit here.
I'm impressed by Houston defensively after losing that coordinator, Phil. It didn't seem like much of a hiccup so far, but they might encounter some. But a game that really intrigues me, you got number 12 Arizona on the road at Mississippi State. Now, we all remember early last year, before we really understood what either of these teams were, there was a battle in the desert, and Mississippi State gave them all they could handle on a 30-23 loss. Now the Sun Devils are on the road in SEC country against the Mississippi State team. Took care of business against Southern Miss on the road last week. I see a line of, last I checked, was 6.5. The Sun Devils were the favorite. This is an interesting game. What do you see playing out here, Phil?
Yeah, that was a strange game last year because I'm watching it in the first half. It was all Arizona State. Good plays, bad plays. I'd give Arizona State 85% good plays. They led 27-3. They had a 262 to 82 yard edge. And I think maybe they relaxed a little bit. And even first drive of the second half, Mississippi State didn't do much. And then Mississippi State started getting it going at the end of that game. And it made a game of it. They came within. They got a touchdown with 5:27 left. It was a 80-yard touchdown pass. So they're down 30-16. You're at your own 20. There's 5 minutes to go. They really have no chance of winning at this point. They throw an 80-yard touchdown pass, but I believe Arizona State then just ran out the clock in the final 5 minutes and didn't give them the ball back. So it wasn't really as close as the final score would indicate. I felt Arizona State was in control top to bottom. But this year, it's a different circumstance. They're on the road. They're in cowbell country there. And I like what Blake Shapen looked pretty good last week against Southern Miss. Not in the first half. I thought the first half Southern Miss had a chance. And then all of a sudden in the second half, they scored touchdowns on the first three drives. Booth and Fluff Bothwell, who comes over from South Alabama, look good at running back. The defense looks much stronger. Remember last year when they played Toledo, they got pushed around, especially at the line of scrimmage. And their big emphasis in the offseason was getting bigger, stronger, faster on the defensive front. I believe they have done that. So I think, unlike last year where I thought Arizona State was much better than the final score would indicate, I think Mississippi State can give them a game this year. So I'm going to lean with the Bulldogs at home.
Stanford at BYU. It's been a couple of long weeks for the Cardinal. Of course, they didn't play last week after losing to Hawaii. BYU routed Portland State and ran for a whopping 468 yards. Take that for whatever it's worth. Don't know a whole lot still about Bear Bachmeier, but they really didn't have to really find out last week. Maybe we get a little bit of a better read on him this week. What do you see here with BYU and Stanford?
Yeah, and Stanford didn't play a bad game against Hawaii. I thought they played a good game in the opener. It is their second game of the season. They're off a bye. I can tell you that they feel they're an underrated team this year and that they're going to surprise some folks. I do think BYU's the better team. BYU plays East Carolina in 2 weeks, but they've got a bye next week, so it should be their full effort. But I think Stanford can play with them. I'm going to say BYU by like 2 touchdowns in this one. I think Schuyler's in the line like 17 in this.
18.5 is what we had at last.
18.5. I'm going to lean with Stanford. Oh, actually, I'm seeing 20.5 right now.
Oh, my goodness.
21. So, wow. Yeah, I'll take Stanford plus the points. Let's say BYU by 14-17. Take Stanford plus the points in this one. But I do think BYU comes out with the win.
Wow, that thing's getting pushed. The action with those Cougars at home. Never sell the Cougars short at home, right? But now for the main event. West Virginia at 1-0. Boy, that sounds fun to say. It's been a while since we
Yeah.
can say it. That's what happens when you don't open with Penn State, right? But West Virginia at 1-0 on the road. I think everybody in and around this program appreciates the dangerous nature of going to Athens. Forget the 24,000, 25,000 seat venue. Forget the fact that they're in the MAC and they're at G5. They won 31 games in 3 years. Their trigger man Parker Navarro is back. We spent a lot of the offseason hearing about this game against Parker Navarro and the Bobcats. It's a dangerous, dangerous challenge for West Virginia. We understand it's all hands on deck. You can't play as sloppy as we did in the first half against Robert Morris with the turnovers. You have to play clean. What we want to do, Phil, is use the tempo and the run game to get into their depth, because I think that's where the Bobcats have concerns. What do you see playing out? The last I saw, this line's probably going to move somewhat too, was 3.5 West Virginia favored, but it opened, I think, as low as 2.5. But you're going to have different lines at different books. But what do you see playing out in Athens with the Mountaineers and the Bobcats?
Yeah, and the number I'm focused on here, Jed, is 60.5. Because when I look at Ohio, I was just super impressed with Parker Navarro against Rutgers last week. I was like, how is Rutgers going to even slow this guy down? 440 yards on the road against a Big Ten team. Look great. He's in control of the offense. And, I think some folks will probably bring up the fact Ohio lost to Kentucky 41-6 last year. A game against a Power 5 team, or a Power 4 team, excuse me. But in that game, Parker Navarro sat, their starting center sat. They sat like 4 key players, saving them for the MAC play. That's not going to happen here. They think they can win this game. So I think the offense will score. But here's the thing with Ohio. If you look at their defense, a couple of years ago, Ohio lost the bulk of their defensive front seven. And I talked to their DC about it, and they gave up 38, 46, 43, 52, 31, 34 points, all in the first 6 games. And he said it takes time for the unit to get together. And then in MAC play, they only gave up like 17 points per game. Same thing last year. They were giving up points in non-conference play, 38 to Syracuse, 41 to Kentucky. But then once they got to MAC play, they were a shutdown unit, a completely different squad. And they lost all 4 starters on the defensive front seven. In fact, they basically lost their defensive front seven from last year. So I think it will take them time defensively. And they're going against Rich Rod and the hurry-up, fast-paced offense that could have scored a lot more points than 45 against Robert Morris last week. In the first half, they had nearly 300 yards. And would they have like 17 points in the first half, Judd?
10-3.
Yeah, 10-3. So, I mean, it was all – they were moving the ball all over the field. I think both offenses are going to move here. You've got the weakness for Ohio, I think, is the defensive front seven. The strength is the offense. For West Virginia, that offense is going to move no matter who's there for Rich Rod. So I like over 60.5. I think this thing's over 60.5 in the third quarter. High-scoring game, and that's my favorite play in this one.
Phil, this might be a little too premature to ask, but when we go back and look at this game maybe a month and a half from now, this could be a very big swing type of game for the Mountaineers to get bowl eligible. So if they lose this game, how much more challenging do you feel like the path is to get to 6 for West Virginia?
Oh, it'd make it really tough. I mean, look at a road schedule Kansas has, West Virginia has this year. They play Kansas, who looks really good. We talked about them earlier. BYU, Houston, Arizona State, and then naturally hosting Texas Tech. We know West Virginia's had all kinds of trouble with Texas Tech in recent years. They host TCU. TCU looked pretty damn good against North Carolina. They host Utah. Utah looked great against UCLA. And they host Pitt. And I think in all those games, they could be the underdog. So lose the game to Ohio, and I think a bowl's going to be pretty tough to get to.
Yeah, got to get this one, move to 2-0, and enter the backyard brawl with maybe some folks from ESPN making the trip to Morgantown. We'll have to see about that. But, Phil, we appreciate you once again for coming back on the show. And as always, be good, and we'll talk to you next week.
Hey, sounds good. A lot of fun talking football with you guys. It should be a fun game this week.
Love it. There you have it. Phil Steele. Be sure to check out his stuff on his website and get his plays, and you can still get his magazine out there as well. Hang tight. We'll be back to wrap up the show with our picks for West Virginia versus Ohio.
When the sun's just rising and the work won't wait, you need the equipment that works just as hard as you do. Johnson Equipment delivers power, performance, and reliability day in, day out. Whether you're plowing fields, hauling loads, or planting the future, our tractors are built to take it and then some. Strong, reliable, ready. 0% financing available for up to 84 months on select models.
Johnson Equipment, farming made easy.
Get all your Mountaineer gear in WVU apparel at the Book Exchange. They're the locally owned and operated retailer with more than 90 years of selling everything you need for game day and everything else you need to show you're the ultimate WVU fan. Shop at their 2 locations at downtown Morgantown or Evansdale on Pattison Drive, or online at bookexchangewv.com.
When shopping online at bookexchangewv.com, be sure to enter code INTHEGUN20 at checkout for an awesome savings of 20%. That's right, 20%.
Back in the gun here, Schuyler Callihan and Jed Drenning. We're to close out Phil Steele Friday, as always, here with our game picks, West Virginia versus Ohio, our ITG sports book. What does the sports booker got booked up for us here this week?
What is the Phil had me wondering with that discussion. Is it 60 the over-under on West Virginia, Ohio?
I saw it when I did the article maybe a day or two ago. It was 60.5. So I don't know where it's at now. It's probably in the same ballpark.
You know, I think an argument can be made either way as to which would most benefit West Virginia.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, there's a narrative that would support either, right? In terms of, but wow, I'm not sure. You know, Zach still has some things to work out with new personnel and some things to figure out, but I would almost at this juncture have to go under with that one. This isn't one of our props, but
yeah, that's what I have.
I mean, I could see why you do it. The weapons Ohio has, they're built offensively. Parker Navarro's legit, but I'll put to you like this: if you were able to tell me on Sunday Parker Navarro didn't get outside the pocket, I'd take way under. Okay.
Yeah.
Way under. But that's not an easy feat. Every team that faces them tries to keep him in the pocket, and nobody's able to do so. That's where the magic happens for the Bobcats. So that's the mission. If you can
that's the toughest part
against this guy. Yes.
That's the toughest part about trying to gauge really this defense, because I mean, offensively, like Phil said, you always kind of know what you're going to get with a Rich Rod offense, but defensively, it's just there's so many question marks. I mean, you didn't get tested last week, so I mean, is this defense as salty as it looked like in week 1, even against a lesser opponent, or is there going to be some areas where there's going to be some hiccups? I mean, I don't know. I have it at 30-27 as my final score prediction, so it puts it just under that total, but.
Same as the Jack State bowl game against Ohio.
Yeah.
You know, well, again, I'm still looking at it like you can't evaluate much from a personnel standpoint against Robert Morris. So whatever I would do would be based on Zach's pedigree from a tactical standpoint. And I'm intrigued to see him try and rise to the challenge schematically against this guy, because he's faced guys like this before.
Mm-hmm.
I know he's going to have answers. It's just a matter of whether or not are we built to execute those answers and contain this guy when not a lot of other teams have. So
I know it's only one game, but it already feels like there's a sense of like comfort knowing that he's the guy calling the defense. You know what I mean? Like you just feel like you're going to be in good hands no matter what happens early in the game. And like that's what I was saying last week with all the fumbles. Like even when the game was so close, you felt like this game's going to get broken open here soon because the defense is playing so well. Zach's calling the shots. He's so analytical. He knows what what's going to end up working. I think there's a level of comfort there that has been missing for quite a while.
You remember not that long ago when Albany was thrown all over us for 300 yards. Okay. Imagine if we fumbled 4 times in that game. See, that gets scary. It's much different when the defense has the other team by the collar, as they should. So where do you think you're going? We're trying to straighten things out here. You just stand still till we get them straightened out. And it felt like that's what the defense was doing against a very overmatched Robert Morris team. So we will see. Mission accomplished in terms of doing what you should against an overmatched offense. We did what good defenses do against overmatched offenses. Now, can we do the same thing or something similar? Can we have success, I should say, against an offense that isn't nearly as overmatched and has a true playmaker at the quarterback spot? This is a very fascinating challenge on Saturday against this offense. So let's go with this week's prop bets. I'm glad we spent that much time talking about the West Virginia defense because now we're going to shift gears and go to the offense. Jaheim White last week, 18 carries. It was a kind of a disjointed, weird feel to. We couldn't get him truly uncorked. It was a hard-earned 93 yards. He came close to popping at least one. He was frustrated that he got taken down in space by one defender.
Could have been a touchdown.
So, yeah, we wanted to get other guys touches as well. And the first time that opportunity arose in the second half, we started to do so. So here's my question with Jaheim after 18 carries against Robert Morris. Completely different challenge on the road against Ohio, an Ohio defense that haven't exactly been world beaters against the run. We talked about the success the Rutgers run game had against them. Over under on his rush attempts, 20.5.
Ooh, okay, 20.5. I think we're going to see some more of Sincere Bowers this week, as I mentioned in the preview. I think we could see maybe more Ty Edwards. We'll see about Clay Ash. I know he kind of got a little banged up there, but I'm going to go over. I think this is a game they really, really want to make it a point to get Jaheim going, break some big ones, and say, hey, buckle up, buddy. This is how it's going to be every single week. We're going to lean on you every single week throughout the season. And yeah, I think he gets over 20.5.
Well, I told you before we came back after the break. I already made my picks. I just want to see if you agree or disagree. That I figured that was the easiest way to do this. I picked over, so I agree with you. So far, it's boring. We both said the same thing. Over 20.5 carries for Jaheim. Now, moving on. Cam Vaughn. Last week, 7 catches, 126 yards.
I know where you're going.
He'll learn from the fumble. So against Robert Morris, 126 receiving yards. In the bowl game for Jack State against Ohio, a career high 183 yards on 9 catches. He really got uncorked. We talked about, if you missed it, go back and look at the preview show. We talked about some of the matchups because a lot of this Bobcat secondary is back. So you can look at some of the individual matchups that Cam Vaughn had against their individual secondary members. And that's fascinating, which we talked about in the preview. So I want an over-under on receiving yards by Cam Vaughn this week. 126 last week, 183 in the bowl. Those are his last 2 games against Ohio. Let's bring this back down to earth. Over-under 99.5. Will he get 100?
I was really hoping it would be over 100 that you were going to say there.
Too easy. Too easy.
99.5. I'm going to go under, unfortunately. I think, again, as I mentioned yesterday, too, like I think this is a game where you're going to want to get Rodney Gallagher going finally. You know, last week he was kind of quiet. Man Singleton was sort of quiet. I think you want to get those slots really activated. Jaheim might even have more of a game in the pass attack. So I'll go under. He's still going to get his yards. He may end up with 90, 95 yards. But I think they're going to try and make it a point to take him, maybe not out of the game, but try to take some of those big explosive plays away, which are going to lead opportunities for the guys in the slots, Jaden Bray. I'll go under.
Boring. I took the under 2.
Damn.
Now, here's why I was concerned in doing so. I hope I'm wrong, obviously, but he's attached to a lot of what we do in the RPO game because he's to the single receiver side. You can set things up as they did in the bowl game to motion away and single him up and isolate him in coverage if you see a favorable matchup that you like. So there's going to be opportunities that are just organic to the offense that, like when you see us throwing those quick hitch routes to the boundary, when you see Nico, playing pitch and catch, flipping that quick hitch out there, that's part of the run game. Okay, if defensively they adjust and apex a defender close enough to the box that Nico's like, hey, we've got an advantage on the perimeter of the pass game, he has the option oftentimes just to say, okay, no handoff, pull it out of the mesh, flip it out to the flat for a quick completion. So those things can add up. You're stacking pennies. Can they add up to the point that you get past 100? Not necessarily, unless he breaks one, which again I hope he does. He almost did the other day. If he breaks one of those quick throws. But then there's also the possibility that, look, if they start throwing resources downhill, you're going to have some single coverage opportunities. Will it be Jaden Bray? Will it be Cam Vaughn? Because now he has friends helping him. So you're one big play in those downfield attempts away from breaking 100 if you take care of a little business as the attachment to the RPO part of it in the pass game. So that's why I'm alarmed or concerned. One big play could put him over 100 because of what happens. Just again, the way things naturally unfold in the offense. Otherwise, but I'm going to take the under because there will be other guys that we're trying to get involved, including the tight ends, including the slots. I don't know if those RPO attachments in the run game are enough to get him over 100 unless he breaks one. I'd love to be wrong.
Yeah.
So let's go with the under. Boring so far. Hopefully we diverge here. And again, I already have my answers. So, final question. This is a pretty easy one. And you're going to have to trust my judgment. That's the game book won't have this. This is going to be the eye of Jed that will dictate this or rule on this. Okay. More fans Saturday, West Virginia or Ohio in the stadium at Peden Stadium. So I'm going to glance around and I'll have to give you my judgment. Now, the beauty of it is the fans who are going can help me out. Maybe tell me if I'm wrong or right, or hopefully it's obvious.
Yeah.
I took West Virginia.
This might be the toughest one. And you said easiest. I think it might be the toughest because it's not every day or every year that a G6 team gets this opportunity. So the short trip, I think, is what would probably lean towards West Virginia. If this was, you're going to Ball State over in Indiana, I mean, it might be a little bit different. It's a little bit longer of a haul. I'm going to go West Virginia too, I think. I don't want to be boring here, but I think that's where I'm leaning. It only houses, what, 24K?
425, depending on. I've seen 25 and change too. So,
and I think they're having some standing room
record.
only. There's that one patch of grass. I think that they can maybe pack some more fans. I don't know if that's part of the 24K or not, but there's going to be a lot of people, like you said, from the Parkersburg area, even Wheeling and the Panhandle. I think that are going to make the trip. You have a bunch of fans in Ohio. I think we're going to have to go with West Virginia here.
Now let's preface this by saying I understand by no means is this a layup, because if you look at this big picture, to get more than half of 24 or 25,000 is daunting.
Yeah,
that's tough. They have all the advantages. They have access to the tickets before anybody else does. They've won 31 games in 3 years. There's tremendous buzz around the Ohio Bobcats football program. Maybe more than they've had in 100 years, several decades.
They love Bobcat football over there.
That's love Bobcat football. There is tremendous buzz. And the fact that Parker Navarro is back, obviously a fan favorite, he's their Pat White. So this is the golden era of Bobcat football.
Yeah.
So by no means is it just easy and say, well, we're West Virginia fans and we're right next door. Of course, we're going to outnumber them. Easier said than done. So this is a challenge to get to 12,500, 13,000, whatever it would take to outnumber them. And I'm curious, when I take my gander out there, I say halfway through the second quarter or so, what in fact it's going to look like. How much green will there be? How much blue and gold will there be? I'm confident enough in West Virginia fans to pull off what I think is a challenging effort. This isn't easy. This is not easy. It's not easy. So, but I'm still going to go with West Virginia. But I wanted to put an asterisk next to that and say, look, we understand Bobcat fans love their football, and they got a lot going on, and they got plenty of reason to be excited. And not only that, but they're looking at this game. I mean, look at the opportunity. Yes, Syracuse has been there. Yes, Iowa State has been there. From a regional standpoint, this is the type of game that I would imagine a lot of Ohio fans have waited forever to get.
Yeah, because they're not going to get Ohio State to come there.
No, they go to Ohio State. Speaking of which, next week.
Yeah.
But so it's a fascinating game because I'm sure it's one they've all circled since it first came out on the schedule with that 2-1. Later on, they come to Morgantown twice, but I'm sure they got geared up and geeked up for it. But it's challenging, but I think West Virginia fans can pull it off. I talked to one who had bought 40 season tickets, and I can't imagine I encountered the only West Virginia fan in the state that was the guy who bought 40 season tickets.
Yeah.
He was a business owner, but so let's hope there's a lot of those. And let's hope Parkersburg just takes over. Charleston helps take over. Everybody, even anywhere along the Ohio River, especially the Mid-Ohio Valley, let's really hope that you travel and take this stadium over like I know you can, because it's not going to be easy, but I think we can do it.
Yeah, it's going to be a very fun dynamic and very interesting, very kind of, and like Rich said, kind of uncomfortable. Even though you may have a bunch of fans there, it's going to be uncomfortable because it's going to be so many people packed in this tiny little place. You got a small locker room. You got the long bus ride. It's just going to feel wonky. It's just going to feel odd. But
even our press box, I mean, that's the first thing I heard.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like we had our broadcasting summit last month, and I was already hearing about the OU press box.
Oh boy,
it's the defensive coordinator's office. Okay. And there are 2 seats. There are literally 2 seats in the press box. So we got to figure all this out. You don't understand. We got engineers. We got on the broadcast team. There's several of us now. Antonik and Andrew Caridi stay back in Morgantown for road games. So that helps.
Well, hopefully they lock up their files. Maybe, if not, there might be a couple of extra sheets laying around.
That's right. Let's check it out. Yeah, see if there's a game plan in there.
Yeah. So good deal. West Virginia and Ohio, 4:00 kickoff. I believe it's on ESPNU. If you're not making the trek over to Athens, it'll be on there for you. Also, go back and watch some of the other episodes this week. We got barbecuing with the beer truck, doing a nice stack of ribs. Yes. And look, I'll be honest. Ribs. I'll be honest. I'm a wings eater. I'm not a ribs guy, but it made me a little interested. It made me a little interested to try and give ribs another crack at it. So we'll see.
Wings are coming. Oh, and something else we haven't mentioned, Schuyler. Look, Nico's 1-0 as a starter in the state of Ohio. He won that game in Cincinnati last year.
Yes,
so
he sure is.
He's basically Ben Roethlisberger in Ohio, right? Come on, he's 1-0, right? So
and
he's got a ways to go before he what was Ben like 119-2 against those Ohio teams or something, but not quite. But Nico is 1-0, so for what that's worth, not a whole lot. But
and he is what 5-0 or so as a starter at WVU.
Well, they count the Pitt game as a starter, but he wasn't, so I'll take it. But
or 4 at least. 3 or 4-0. He hasn't lost yet as the starter.
Games he started. Okay, let's rattle them off. All right. Okay, we had the Cincinnati game we talked about last year. If you go back in order, Arizona, Texas Tech, and Robert Morris. Like I said, the Pitt game, he came off the bench a handful of snaps into it, but almost TCU, if you remember. Almost. We thought all week he was going to be TCU as well.
So he got
Garrett, got a little magic rub on that and healed up and played well, but.
So there you go. Barbecuing with the beer truck, doing some ribs. We have our game preview. Big Daddy came on the show, did a really cool discussion with he and Big O, talking about their video that they put together, which is definitely worth the watch. Jed and us get into the weeds of the game preview. So there you have it. Our second week in the books. We'll have the recap, I believe, on Sunday. And as always, be an ear and tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast. For Jed Drenning, I'm Schuyler Callihan. Thank you guys for watching, and you've been in the gun.
ITG.
The fun doesn't have to stop here.
Be sure to hit subscribe and never miss an episode.
If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback,
be sure to follow us on X at In the Gun Podcast.
Join us again next time.
Until then,
tell an ear to tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast.
This mission is over. It's over.